your eyes held a message tender, saying I surrender all my love to you. Midnight brought us sweet romance. I know all my whole life through I'll be remembering you, whatever else I do. Midnight, where the stars and you.
Everyone, hello and welcome to the third annual Writing Out Cancer podcast. I am your host, Alex Ross. I am ecstatic to be here. I hope everybody's having a great Halloween night. So those that aren't familiar with the show, it is pre-recorded, but it will be showing live, and my future self will be answering anything in the comments, talking with the folks that are listening live. So say hi, future me. I'm sure he's ecstatic. I mean, Halloween night is one of my favorites of the year, and I am really thankful to be doing this again. Basically, the show is a way for me to use not only my creativity, but the creativity of others to raise awareness for a good cause. The website will be listed on the banner here and below. It is to raise awareness for the American Cancer Society. The good folks do a lot of really good work there. Go check out their website either during or after the show. It's a fantastic organization, and I'm always happy to work with them once a year to do this show and to have their blessing. And fun fact, I had to shoot that opening with Mike Myers, I had been doing several vlogs on my YouTube channel for those that follow my shenanigans on there for the Halloween movie series leading up to the new one, which I did enjoy, and that thing's been doing really, really well at the box office. I think it's been #1 the past 2 or 3 weeks, and it made $77 million in its first opening days, and that's a record for a slasher film. It's really a big deal for horror fans and for the horror franchise, and I don't know if I want them to do more, but I mean, it's inevitable with a title like that. But I'm happy to be doing this on Halloween. It's one of my favorite holidays. As I said, it's like in the past I've done the podcast on Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I wanted to do it on Halloween this year because I was just anxious to do the show again and to have a sort of theme to go with it that fit with this particular story. And it's funny, whenever I ask people to join the show, they always ask me, well, since you're a horror writer, do you want it to be in the horror genre? And I'm like, I always say no. I like a wide variety of genres to be in the show, and that's something that I'm always happy with. And my first one is by John Ballard. He's somebody that I know through my writers group, and his story is called Stress. Now, the holidays, especially like Thanksgiving and Christmas, are always stressful times for people. And I think that this excerpt from his book, Decoding the Workplace, is a great thing to sort of pay attention to and to absorb, because stress affects us all. So let's have a listen.
Readings about stress from my book, Decoding the Workplace. Judd Turner ate, lived, and breathed his job. A mid-level marketing analyst in his early 40s, he threw himself into every undertaking. He was pleased when Wallace, the senior VP for marketing, selected him to develop the marketing plan for a new product that was anticipated to be the company's profit leader within 3 years. The challenges were enormous. The expectations for success were high. Turner knew this project would make or break his career. For 4 months, Turner worked on the project nearly every waking minute. He went to bed thinking about the plan and woke up with it on his mind. Except for sleep, his effort was 24/7. His wife, Gina, had never seen him work this much or this hard. Slowly, his behavior changed. He grew emotionally distant. Bottles of scotch disappeared more quickly. Gina thought, "I'll be so thankful when this is over and I can have my husband back." But this was not to be. Turner kept the senior VP from marketing in the loop as the plan developed. The senior VP had nothing but praise for Turner's work. Finally, he told Turner, "This is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I think we're ready to take this to the CEO. Great work, Judd." The meeting with the CEO and senior staff was arranged. Turner presented the plan, but the meeting did not go as anticipated. From the start, it was clear the CEO did not understand how the plan would achieve the marketing goals. Turner did his best, but the CEO just didn't get it. Turner kept waiting for the senior VP for marketing to jump in and help him out. He knew Wallace understood the plan and thought it was great. Finally, the CEO, exasperated, said, "Okay, that's enough. I don't see anything here worth pursuing. This plan just stinks. What do you think, Wallace?" Without hesitating, the senior VP for marketing replied, "Yes, sir, pretty smelly. I should have given Turner more guidance. We'll regroup and get someone else on it immediately." Turner felt shock, absolute shock. Turner could barely take a breath. His superior had not supported him. He had, in fact, betrayed him. As Turner walked back to his office, replaying the past few minutes in his mind, he felt as if the air was being squeezed out of him. Months of giving everything to the company, years of dedicated service, and it was over. It was all over. All he felt was pain, emptiness, failure. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't breathe. Turner opened the window in his office on the 23rd floor and stepped through it into eternity. News of Turner's suicide stunned the organization. Those who knew him were incredulous. Turner was so level-headed, such a normal guy. What could have happened? The signs were there. The lack of sleep, the alcohol abuse, the emotional detachment. Turner was in the most stressful job of his life, and it got to him. He didn't manage the stress. He was stressed out long before the fateful meeting with the CEO. But when his superior did not back him and instead left him standing all alone, the thread that held Turner to reality snapped. A darkness deep and vast came over him and took him away. The consequences of dysfunctional stress can creep upon us. Over a career, you will work with coworkers who have a variety of stress-related ailments, from backaches to hypertension to headaches to depression. Sometimes you will know about these ailments, but other times you will not. Work-related stress can play out in our private lives, such as through drug abuse, both legal and illegal. You might develop stress-related problems yourself. Some people even die from stress-related coronary diseases. The Japanese have a word for death from work, karashi. Estimates of the annual cost of stress for U.S. organizations range as high as $300 billion. My first encounter with stress was when I was a senior in high school. Wrestling practice had ended. Time to head home. In the Piedmont of North Carolina, the January air was crisp. It was twilight. I walked out of the gym and toward my car. Well, to be precise, it was actually our family car, but my dad bought it on my 16th birthday and told me privately that it was really mine. And what a car! A 59 Chevy Impala, black with red interior, twin antenna. On the rear, at 70 miles an hour, it wanted to fly. It just didn't have wings. As I walked toward the Chevy, I noticed my left hand beginning to twitch, then shake, and then my right. And the shaking was increasing. I started to feel sick. I wanted to vomit. I was closer to the outside wall of the gym building than to the car. I walked over and leaned my back against the building. Then my legs collapsed. I slumped beside the gym, shaking all over, crying uncontrollably. No one else was outside. No one saw me. After a minute or two, I regained my composure. I made my way to the car, drove home on country roads, and told my parents what had happened. They called our family doctor, who said simply, run a tub of hot water and have Johnny sit in it for an hour. That did the trick. Afterwards, I was fine. To this day, if I take a bath instead of taking a shower, my wife will ask how I am feeling. I did not understand what was happening at the time. Looking back, it's easy to see that my experience was a consequence of dysfunctional stress. I was under great pressures, as most teenagers are at some point. No one in my family had ever gone to college. There was no money to help me, and I understood that. I was competing for congressional appointment to the U.S. Air Force Academy, but the odds were against me 50-1. The girl of my dreams was dating my best friend, and the girl I was dating was in love with another guy. Stress got to me. Even though I was in great shape as a wrestler, stress knocked me up against the wall. It shook me. It said, enough is enough. Many years later, I experienced stress in the extreme. About a month after an auto accident, I started experiencing pains as if I were about to have a heart attack. My blood pressure climbed to precariously dangerous levels. I became very sick. My doctor ordered tests and prescribed medications, but my sickness continued. My body and mind ached. 6 weeks passed. I did not know how long I could endure this illness. One night on my way home from class, I drove through the intersection where the accident occurred. It was a rainy evening like it was on the night of the accident. I started shaking. I felt totally helpless. I drove the few remaining blocks to our home, lay down beside my wife, and cried for 20 minutes as she held me. Then everything was fine. All my symptoms disappeared. Post-traumatic stress. I had read about it and written about it, but I had never experienced it. There are powerful memories in our body that we might or might not have access to without professional help. Stress can kill.
I think there's something really magical about being a kid. Something fun where you're encouraged to use your imagination in most cases, and I think that's extremely important. I can remember vaguely my mom and dad reading me Where the Wild Things Are and Frog and Toad, two of my favorites, until I grew up and started reading Goosebumps. But I really enjoyed those times, and I always felt fairly lucky. And yeah, it's like my siblings and I like to joke and make fun of our parents for their various quirks. My dad once scooped up dog turds with a spoon, and my mother's reaction to that was quite hilarious. And that's kind of what the family experience is, or what we all hope for it to be, is for it to be these moments of just hilariousness and caring. And yeah, we're gonna fight from time to time, like that time my brother dropped my toothbrush on the floor, or that time that one of the girls wore the other shirt. That always leads to something that's not so pleasant. But hey, you're gonna have that when you have 6 people and 2 dogs living underneath the same roof for such a long time. But this next one makes me think of my childhood, because, and Caitlyn is a newcomer. She seems really nice, and she's kind of got this motherly voice to her, and if you're listening, I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. That it's like my mom reading a story to me again. But her story Bubbles kind of took me back to those moments, to my mom especially reading me Frog and Toad. Sorry, Dad, it's like you got a great voice, but it's not that ideal for putting me to sleep when it's bedtime. So here is Bubbles by Caytlyn Brooke.
Hi guys, my name is Caytlyn Brooke. I'm a young adult fiction author, and today I am reading a piece that I did for the Write Out Cancer called Bubbles. More, more, Jack cried, clapping his hands together. His mom smiled and dipped the wand in again, raising it to her lips. Jack grinned, excitement gleaming in his bright blue eyes. Ready, honey? His mom asked. She exhaled, and dozens of bubbles alighted into the air. Yay! Jack squealed, dancing in his light-up shoes. He lifted his arms and closed his eyes as the bubbles descended toward his reaching fingers. Soon they were all gone. Again, Mama. Okay, 1 second, his mom said, prepping the wand. She raised it to her lips and inhaled shakily, unable to draw a full breath. Mama, more bubbles, her 4-year-old demanded. His mother smiled weakly, trying to force the bubble mixture to form and float away. Her vision blurred, and she felt the jar slip from her fingers. "Mama, are you okay?" Jack asked quietly. He placed his hand on her leg, but was powerless to stop her as she collapsed to the grass below. "Okay, Jack, we need to be very careful and quiet in here, all right?" Jack's dad, Ethan, said. Jack nodded solemnly and walked through the open doorway. "Is Mama here?" "Yes, she's past this curtain," his dad replied. "But be quiet, remember?" Jack didn't respond, just pulled the aqua curtain aside to reveal a white, sterile room filled with numerous beeping machines and a small bed. "Mama, you're here!" Jack exclaimed, racing over to the side of the bed. He grabbed his mom's pale hand and flinched at the cold temperature of her skin. "Hi, baby," his mom whispered. Her cloudy eyes roamed the room until they settled on his face. "Are you sick, Mama?" Jack asked. "Yes, honey," she answered, rubbing his cheek with her thumb. "Can they give you a Band-Aid?" Jack volunteered, tilting his head. His mom laughed, wincing. "I'm afraid not." "When can you come home?" Jack continued. His mom picked up his hand and pulled him closer. "I'm not sure. Mommy has to stay here for a little while." "To get better?" Jack asked. "Yes, sweetheart, to get better," his mom said, smiling, while a tear trailed down her cheek. "Can I sit with you?" Jack wondered, already starting to climb the metal frame on the side. "No, buddy," Ethan called, rushing over to pull him off. "Remember, Mommy needs to rest." "Ethan, it's okay," his mom said quietly. Reaching forward, she held out her arms, and Jack mimicked her actions until their fingertips touched. "Come right over here, honey." Jack beamed and cuddled into his mother's side, resting his head in the crook of her neck and shoulder. He let out a content sigh, finding his mother's calming scent regardless of all the strange hospital smells. "I love you, Mama," Jack whispered. "I love you," she tried to say, but a round of fierce coughing overcame her. "Julia, what's—" Ethan stammered, his hands fluttering nervously, unsure what or how he could help. Take him," Julia gasped, inhaling raggedly. "Mama?" Jack started to cry as he shook with his mother's movements. "Come here, Jack," Ethan said, pulling him out of his mother's arms as a team of nurses flooded the room. "Sir, you and your son need to leave," one of the women instructed, pointing to the door. Behind her, Julia continued to spasm on the bed, unable to draw a breath. The cancer in her lungs refused to be dormant any longer. "Mama, no!" Jack cried, trying to fight his way back to his mother's side. The women in maroon scrubs swarmed the bed, shouting commands. Their main goal was to stabilize the wildly beeping machines. "Sir," the nurse ordered again. Ethan tore his eyes away from his wife and shielded his son from the heartbreaking scene. With Jack still reaching for his mom, they ran out of the room, tears streaming down both their faces. 2 weeks later. Ethan set down his coffee cup and rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand. He'd been spending his nights at the hospital with Julia. She still had yet to show any sign of improvement. CT scans revealed her body was riddled with cancer, like a tree infested with termites. The doctors were still trying to determine why it took her so long to succumb, why there were no symptoms. The largest mass was found in her uterus. He squeezed his eyes shut even tighter, furious with himself. They had been trying to get pregnant for over a year. Julia asked to see a fertility specialist so many times, but Ethan kept putting it off and deflecting her concerns. They conceived Jack within days of being off birth control. There wasn't anything wrong with them. There couldn't be. If only we had checked. If I hadn't been so stubborn, Ethan sobbed. "Daddy?" a little voice whispered. "Are you sick too?" Ethan inhaled and wiped his tears away, forcing a smile. "No, buddy. I'm just thinking about Mommy," he admitted, pulling his son onto his lap. "Can she come home soon?" Jack asked. "Not yet. The doctors are still trying to make her better. Do you want to go see her today?" Jack smiled and nodded enthusiastically. "I'll bring my bubbles and we can play." Ethan helped his son slide off his lap. He didn't have the heart to say no. An hour later, they crossed the threshold into Julia's room. Since Ethan left yesterday, the number of wires and tubes snaking into his wife's veins had tripled. She looked so small, like a child hiding amongst a mountain of pillows. Ethan tried to keep from frowning. She looked awful. The yellow lighting made her skin look gray and ashen, and her once smooth features looked withered. Her cheekbones stood out sharply with the rapid weight loss. Her appearance didn't bother Jack, though. The moment he saw her, he ran to her side. "Mama, we're back!" he squealed happily. At first, Julia didn't respond, and Ethan sucked in his breath, terrified they were too late. "Mama? Mama, are you sleeping?" Jack didn't hesitate. Like last time, he climbed the metal railing and carefully crawled up the side of the bed. "Mama? Mama, wake up!" Jack's pudgy fingers gently stroked his mother's face. Ethan knew he should stop him, but he was too shaken to move. If he did, then it would be real. Like a prince in a fairy tale, Jack leaned forward and kissed his mother on the forehead. With a small cough, her eyes fluttered open, and a large smile brightened her face. "Hello, sweet boy. I missed you so much," his mom greeted. "Hi, Mama," Jack replied easily. "Are you better?" Julia wheezed a small laugh and let her head roll from side to side. Mommy still feels yucky." "You're not yucky. You're beautiful," Jack told her, placing his hands on either side of her face. "Thank you, honey. Mommy needed to hear that," she said. "I brought bubbles. Can we blow them?" Jack asked, take them out of his coat pocket. "Oh, buddy, let's not do that right now," Ethan said, but Julia waved her hand. "It's okay. This might be the last." She stopped talking, her eyes conveying what they already knew. "Let me see those bubbles," Julia said. Turning back to Jack, she tried to make her voice bright. "Oh, the purple bottle, my favorite." Jack nodded, holding out the jar to her. Slowly, Julia unscrewed the lid and withdrew the wand. "I need your help, okay?" "Sure," Jack said, taking the wand from her weak grasp. He drew in a big breath and blew. The bubbles sped away and floated down to land on the cozy sheets. "Can we do it again?" His mom nodded and held the jar out to him to dip once more. On the other side of the room, Ethan opened the window, inviting the sunshine and warm breeze inside. "That might help carry them further," he explained. "Great idea, Daddy," Jack said, letting loose another wave of bubbles. He exclaimed gleefully as one popped on his mother's hand. "Oh, that tickled," Julia beamed, reaching up to poke Jack in the belly. Ethan grinned and joined his family, his heart aching at the joyful sight. He prayed that he could freeze the moment forever. Gently, he leaned over and placed a soft kiss on his wife's temple. "I love you," she whispered, closing her eyes. "Mama, Mama, watch the bubbles! They're flying so high." Jack pointed to a small trail of pink and blue bubbles chasing the breeze. They floated around the room for a minute and then silently drifted out the window. "Wow, isn't that amazing?" his mom replied quietly. "Look at all those colors. Where do you think they're going?" "To fly in the sky," Jack announced, blowing more. Soon, the small room was filled with them, and the sight was magical. "To forever fly in the sky," his mom repeated. "That sounds perfect, sweet boy. I love you so much. Remember to always watch the bubbles. Watch the bubbles," she whispered. Her voice faded away. Jack blew one more time, his laughter carrying the bubbles away. They danced along the autumn breeze toward the beckoning blue sky. As they drifted into the sunlight, they sparkled, reflecting the scene behind them, and soared into the heavens above. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you like this story. Bye.
So, interesting fact, I had actually never really seen The Shining before this year. The Stanley Kubrick film starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. And I wasn't sure if I really liked it the first time around. I thought it was just okay. But then something about it kept calling me back where I was like, there has to be more to this. There's got to be a reason that people love this film. And so I liked it, but I didn't love it. And then I watched it about 4 times since then, and might even watch it again Halloween night. And I am absolutely mesmerized by the film. I think it is absolutely terrifying. There's just something eerie about it, about these three people trapped in this giant hotel that is all encompassing. And fun fact, Stephen King doesn't like that adaptation of his book, because the original novel, while it is scary, it's more of a story of redemption. The alcoholism and the overall relationship between Jack and his son Danny is played up more, whereas Jack Nicholson's performance in the movie is more about a man that actually does want to hurt his family, whereas in the novel he can't help it because there's this force that overcomes him that represents his struggle with alcoholism. And it's more of a story of redemption in the book. And there was a TV miniseries starring Steve Weber where he played the title role, and I liked the miniseries. It's obviously not as good as the movie, but it's a better representation of the original source material. Steve Weber is excellent in the series. He's much more sympathetic. He's not as scary as Jack Nicholson, but that's not the point. It's a good story. I kind of wish they would have toned down the supernatural elements in the miniseries, like maybe not shown the ghosts at all, except maybe the bartender, because they look really, really cheesy. But I would highly recommend checking it out, but going into with the mindset that it's not going to be like the movie, it's going to be more like the book, and the book is quite excellent. And The Shining, along with Suspiria, are one of those movies that are more terrifying the more you watch them, and they were something that was very influential on me while I was working on my 5th book. And it's just, they're high forms of art that do storytelling through images. Stanley Kubrick and Dario Argento are very good with images and camera shots and using colors to represent stuff, as opposed to using straight up dialogue or conventional storytelling elements. And I find that to be absolutely fascinating and something that not a whole lot of people can pull off. I think the closest we've gotten to today are Christopher, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's Esser's Redemption by Don Paul, a longtime friend that I have known since before publishing my first book. She's a great children's author. Take a listen.
Esther's Redemption by Don M. Paul. Crinkled leaves hit the glass. Another winter will be here soon, Esther thought. I don't know how long I'll be able to stay here. I need to get another winter coat, some warm socks, and new gloves, she grumbled. Aw, your old gloves are just fine, Charlie said. You've got convenient holes for your fingers. If you had one of those portable phones everyone carries these days, they'd be perfect. She's back again with that long face of hers. Ever since she pounded that for sale sign in a few weeks ago, she just keeps coming back and staring. Why she never comes in, I don't know. Esther's fingers slipped. Ow! Got another sliver. Moving on might not be so bad. She sucked the injured finger as she looked back out the window. She looks like a lost puppy. Not that I'd want to take her home, though. I want to go ask her what's going on, but I don't want her to know we're living in here. She might know I'm here. Aw, you're the type people overlook. I wish I was. They see me with my shopping cart everywhere. Cars almost run into it, or me. What's wrong with people nowadays? Everyone's in such a hurry, and nobody's got a good word for someone like me anymore. Esther slapped the windowsill, and then she quickly looked outside to see if the woman was still there. She didn't want to be heard. After all, she needed this place for as long as she could stay. Luckily, she was gone. Esther had counted herself lucky the day she'd found the church. She'd parked her cart behind some trash cans in the alley and was resting on a back door stoop when she spotted a few teenagers by the old cellar door. The wood at the bottom had rotted, which created a gap big enough for one of their scrawny arms to reach up and pull down the old-fashioned handle. A little later, as she'd enjoyed her cigar, they'd come running out of the building screaming. Esther had laughed hard. She watched them disappear down the alley and then sobered quickly, wondering at their apprehension. She remembered thinking that drugs were ruining this country. I think that young lady's name is Amber, Charlie said. What do I care? Why don't you tell me something useful once? Your hair needs washing. She lifted a piece to smell it. He's right. I don't remember the last time I had a good shower. Might be time to visit the shelter and get one. I get tired of doing chores, though. That's another thing that's changing for the worse in this world. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned charity? Nowadays, they make us work for whatever we get. Esther lumbered down off the pew, her bones creaking as she went. She stretched her arms and rolled her shoulders. I haven't been up there 10 minutes and I'm already stiff. Hot water from a shower would help. Old Man Winter is coming. Esther sat at a table with her plate of tacos and lemonade. She eyed the other patrons and hulked over her food, wrapping her arms around her platter. Oh, I know how all of you are, thieves and liars, all of you. The only one I really can trust is Charlie. It's too bad, though, if I head south, I'll sure miss him. I know he won't come with me. Dusk fell as she snuck back into the church. The old door squeaked, but she wasn't worried because nobody was outside. Charlie, she called, climbing the interior steps. I'm clean. You can come out now. How was the shower? He asked, creeping closer. Esther nodded. It helped. The arthritis is getting bad with this colder weather, and look, my fingers are starting to curl in upon themselves. She held her hands out for his perusal. I've seen it happen time and time again, he said, nodding sympathetically. I was thinking about going south. The lock rattled, interrupting her. Who's that? What do they want? Esther whispered. Charlie rushed to hide. Esther stepped one way and then another, trying to figure out where to go, then grabbed a dusty hymnal from a pile sitting on the altar table and held it high as a weapon, panicked. The door opened. A beam from the streetlight outside fell in front of her. The young saleswoman stood in the doorway, her face shadowed by the dimming dusk light. Hello? Maybe she can't see me. I'll just stand still. Maybe she'll go away. Hello, ma'am? The young woman asked, entering the sanctuary. The woman continued. Who are you? Can I help you? Esther's eyes searched the area for escape. When she realized she was caught, her shoulders slumped, and she released her held-up breath. What do you want? She grumbled. I'm not doing anything here. I'm not hurting anything. The young woman held up her hands. I'm sure you're not. What's your name? I'm Amber. What should I tell you for? The woman's face dropped and she stuttered again. Esther stood there enjoying her discomfort until the young woman took a deep breath and stood tall. Uh-oh, that little missy's got a backbone. Well, I've just bought this property and now it's mine, so officially you're trespassing. Bang! Esther had dropped the hymnal and the noise startled them both. Amber looked around. Wow, this place is really run down. Much more than I had hoped. I spent all my savings to buy it at auction. I couldn't really afford it, but I couldn't see allowing it to be torn down either. Esther glanced from one side of the church to the other. She hadn't seen anything wrong with the place when she moved in, but putting herself in this girl's mindset now, she saw the dilapidation. Amber had her work cut out for her. The few pews left were scattered, chipped, and overturned. One even lay broken in 3 pieces. Esther's eyes landed on her bed. The old lumpy red cushions made for a more comfortable pallet than dirty boxes or that plastic bag mat the shelter had handed out last year, though the dust made her cough some nights. Funny thing, though, the stained glass windows still reflected multiple colors onto the church floor. The light warmed Esther inside just a bit, and few things could do that nowadays. Amber began to walk inside the perimeter. She brushed her hand along the back of a dusty pew, then looked at her mitten with a frown and brushed her mitts together to remove the dust. She released a breath that blew her bangs up over her hat rim. Esther took pity on her. At least the colored windows are still in good shape. Amber looked up. The sun was so bright that they lit from within. Esther realized she couldn't even see the grime on them. She smiled. She wanted to tell Charlie, but he was nowhere to be found. Charlie, she called. Amber jerked. Esther laughed, startling herself. Charlie, come out here. Amber's face paled as Charlie emerged from a door on the side of the chancel. Esther looked at Charlie, then at Amber, then back to Charlie. Is her face that pale, or is she reflecting him? She studied him. He stood 8 feet tall and glowed pearl luminescent. I guess he can be forbidding, but he's never felt like that for me. Esther's mind went back to the day she found the church. She had gone to her place under the bridge, but cops were shooing people out, so she had rolled her cart back to the church under the cover of darkness. The cellar door was slightly ajar after catching one of the teen's shoes. Esther looked up and said a prayer of thanks for the blessing. Then she gathered her belongings from her cart into a pack and lifted the old wooden door. Listening intently, she crept in quietly down the few steps to the basement. She took extra care because those teenagers had run away screaming, after all. The hair on the back of her neck rose, but she scoffed and told herself not to fear. She ignored the sensation as she headed up the interior staircase. Moments of fear didn't come often, but her grandma had told her to call on Jesus when they did. Jesus, please, she whispered over and over in the dark. The moonlight cascading through the colored windows lit her way as it shone a path to pews that sat askew. She dropped her bundle and pushed two of them together. Then she pulled her fleece blanket out of her pack and lay down in her new bed, feeling almost safe huddled between the pew backs. She thanked Jesus as sleep took over her. The next morning she woke as Charlie hovered above her. She closed her eyes and rubbed them, trying to determine if the cloud above her was a dream or if she was growing cataracts. When she opened her eyes again, it was still there. She whispered, "Jesus, please." "Oh yeah, he's my buddy," Charlie had said. The comment stunned her, and for a moment she didn't know what to do. If she sat up, she would bump right into him, but reason got the best of her, and she thought, "I can't lie here all day." Taking a deep breath of courage, she said, "Well, did he send you with my breakfast? 'Cause I could eat a horse." Charlie laughed and then flown up and over the pews to land squarely on the floor in front of her. Esther remembered her stomach fluttering as she took in his pale countenance and huge wings. He'd let her touch them once. They were softer than anything else she had ever felt, like brushed silk. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what I'd do. I hate this world sometimes. Esther looked back at Amber's still glowing face with her mouth hanging open and took pity once again. "It's okay. I'm sure you know what an angel is?" At the girl's nod, she continued, "This is Charlie. He's my angel." Charlie cleared his throat. "Well," Esther said, "not my angel per se. He's the angel who watches over churches and church-going people in this neck of the woods." Charlie smiled at Amber. The smile lit the room and Amber threw her hand up to shade her eyes. Charlie quickly closed his mouth. Esther hooted. "What did I tell you about that? I told you it was like a beacon." Speak up, child. We can't hear you when you mumble like that." Charlie cleared his throat again. "Sorry," Esther said. Amber snapped her mouth shut and swallowed. "It's nice to meet you," she curtsied at Charlie. "Maybe a better question is, what can we do for you? This is my church, dagnabbit. I'm not going to give it up without a fight." Then she whispered, "Jesus, please." Amber stood silently for a few moments, and then her eyes crinkled. "Well, how about you help me clean it up?" "Oh, great," Esther thought. "Here's another one that wants me to go to work. The lease on my apartment is up at the end of the month, and since I spent my savings on this place, I don't have the money to set up a new one. I thought maybe I'd sleep here for a few weeks until I save some money and can decide what to do next. I've got just enough in my checking account to get the lights and water going on in here, and my friends can help me move my stuff in at the end of the month." Esther's chest ached. "You want me to clean it up so you can live here? But I live here." Amber laughed. "I see that. Normally I wouldn't feel comfortable letting a random person stay in my house," she said, looking at Charlie. "But if you're friends with an angel, I feel pretty safe about you. I just thought that maybe if you help me clean it up, you'd want to stay here too, at least for a while, until I figure out my next move." Esther thought about that for a moment. Her natural inclination was to scoff and yell at this young woman, but then the thought of clean water and lights and being able to stay in this place had begun to consider home made her eyes sting. Imagine sleeping in a bed and warm here, she thought. She looked at Charlie. He smiled at her and she rushed to cover her eyes. "Yeah, I guess that would be all right," she grumbled. "Okay then," said Amber. "I don't have to work tomorrow as it's Saturday, so I'll come by with some cleaning supplies and we'll get busy. Imagine that. I'm going to live on holy ground with an angel and an Esther as roommates." Amber studied Esther. "Are you going to be all right here tonight by yourself? Or yourself?" she asked. Esther couldn't speak. There was a lump blocking her throat. Charlie nodded and shone his bright smile at Amber. "We're going to be fine." Amber nodded. "I'll look up then and I'll see you tomorrow." Then she left. "What good luck you've got," Charlie beamed. Esther swallowed and took a deep breath, then stood tall. "It's Jesus. He's done it again."
So I think the most rewarding part of the writing process for me has not just been publishing 4 books. The writing process is a lot of fun and I have a good time doing it. I want to pull my hair out sometimes. I want to scream to the heavens like, why do I do this to myself? But eventually I get over it. But back to my point, I think the best part of this writing process is making new friends and getting to work with very extremely talented people. The person that did the art that you're looking at right now is Emily Thornton. She has been tremendous on the past 4 books that I've worked on, 4 counting the one that I'm working on right now. She is an extremely talented person, and it's been exciting to see her grow to, like, she just seems to top herself every time that I collaborate with her, and I'm excited to continue to do so. But I also accumulated a new editor during my last book. Her name is Richberger. She is a talented writer in her own right, and she is currently working on her first book called Lipstick Covered Magnet. I don't want to spoil it for anyone because I'm afraid that I won't do it justice, but from hearing about her talk about it, when you hear somebody talk about a certain like writing project and you see or hear that sort of twinkle that goes along with it, it's something that I enjoy seeing and that I encourage, and it's important to encourage people to follow their dreams. And I myself now know how hard it is to write one of these things. You have to be a very particular kind of crazy to even take the plunge, and to continue to come back for more says something else entirely. But I think seeing more new talented people take that plunge is extremely important. I mean, everybody's worried about being the next Stephen King or being the next Dean Koontz, being the next Terry Brooks, but really just be the next you. There's only going to be one of you. And there's a quote I heard from Leonard Nimoy that stuck out to me. I may not be the strongest, I may not be the fastest, and I may not be the smartest, but I am the best at being me. And I think that's a very important message to remember when you are feeling a little bit down about yourself, when you're not feeling so great, not feeling so happy. Maybe think about that. Think about that. Really, there's nobody on this planet like you. No two people are alike. Like, we have similarities, we have common ground, but we're not exactly alike. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So I want to lead into her story, and I'm glad that she was able to join us this year. I combined both of her stories because they're short and they're sweet. It's called Deer Hunter and I Can Live.
Dear Hunter, I hope you're doing well. Although we said our goodbyes in a hurry and while screaming profanities like they were daggers, I'd be lying if I said even what we shared didn't cross my mind from time to time. Who am I kidding? There isn't a day that goes by that my thoughts don't get tangled in the thousands of memories I have carefully placed in order from idyllic to dreadful, my own personal Dewey Decimal System. But don't worry, this note is as far as my compulsion will go. I fully intend to wallow in the sorrow I've grown so accustomed to, and mask my feelings for you through a number of insignificant relationships. I just wanted you to know that you screwed me up. I cannot love someone who isn't you. I can live without you. At the time, we were young and happy, but now we're older, wiser, and depressed. The moments we thought meant everything ended up meaning nothing at all. But the way you looked at me connoted forever, and my heart seemed to cling to the notion that our love could surmount anything. Yet every waking moment I'm haunted by the image of you kissing her, and the inevitable separation between my heart and yours. When I said forever, I meant it, even if my actions seemed to contradict that promise. I was naive to think anyone after you could level up, and I was naive to believe I wouldn't regret my decision to rescind your love. I've grown to realize that my incessant love for you is part of the routine. I can live with knowing that no one will replace you. I can live with the relentless waves of regret and remorse. I can live with the torture that comes with loving someone who probably no longer loves me. But I can't live knowing that our love, though short-lived, was the best I ever had.
So I mentioned earlier all the neat and magical and mystical and fantastic people I've gotten to collaborate with. But another thing that's crazy to me is this next person who has been participating in Writing Out Cancer since the very first podcast back in 2016, Anna Sanderson, who lives all the way in the UK. How crazy is that with the internet, that with social media and everything, and because of this career path I've chosen, I can connect with somebody that is over on the other side of the planet and I can collaborate with them thanks to technology. And I know that there are people that are scared of where technology is going with AI and stuff, but I think we take a lot of this stuff for granted, and it's really wild to me that I can tweet to this person and be like, hey, do you want to be part of this podcast? And she can record it and I can put it onto the show. And I'm curious how being a writer over there is different from being a writer here in America, or if there's any difference at all. If I don't know, if it's just like something as simple as the way that you prepare your coffee over there is different, or I don't know. I would love to hear about that. Anna, if you're listening, let's collaborate sometime. Let's like do a double interview or something. I think that would be really neat. And I appreciate loyalty too. Like a lot of these people that are participating in the show this year aren't all new. They're people that have been with it since I decided to do it as a yearly thing 2 years ago, and I think it's really neat. So her stories, she submitted 2, and when she asked if she could submit 2, I was like, absolutely, the more the merrier. It's called Presence and Myself and I.
This piece was originally published in issue 5 of Rock Salt, and it started as a character exercise, looking into the past and childhood of a character called Dylan, who features in a novel I'm currently working on. And it explores that age-old question of what, if anything, we'd say to our younger selves if we had the chance. So the piece is called Myself and I, and it was written by me, Anna Sanderson, and it's read by Daniel Smith.
Sometimes when I dream, I see you. You're about 4 or 5, and you're playing on the beach, building sandcastles with that old green spade. You know the one I mean? You got it from that little shop on the corner, and Dad complained about the price, but he bought it anyway. You love that spade. As you dig, determined to reach the wet sand further down, the good stuff that helps the castle stick together, you smile. And I know you're making up stories in your mind, stories about the king and queen who live in your castle, the dragons and the goblins who inhabit the cellar below. You're imagining sword fights and banquets in the great hall, where there are thick candles dripping with wax and a long wooden table filled with all your favourite sweets. And you're thinking of the queen, because even though girls smell funny and I always think they're right, everyone needs someone. Or so Dad says. And this queen is beautiful and kind, perfect even. You think that one day, when you're older, you might have a castle too, one with sweets you can actually eat. That's if you don't run away with the circus and learn to walk the tightrope instead. Or if you don't become a fireman like Grandad Ron used to be, or a tough guy like Richie. There's lots you'd like to do. Too much to choose from, really. But a castle with the Queen and some sweets would be great. Sometimes, when I see you, I'm there too. We're together on the beach, me with my stubble and trilby hat, and you with your Ninja Turtles t-shirt. One soul in 2 bodies. Like something out of the science fiction films you'll soon learn to love. I'm never sure if you can see me, but I've been there lots of times. In the past I used to try and speak to you, but the words would get jumbled in my mind, and whenever I opened my mouth to speak, nothing would come out. So I gave up. Not because that's a good thing to do, it isn't, but because I realised I wasn't even sure what I wanted to tell you. Maybe, don't leave your uni work until the last minute to complete. Or, that shirt you love is in the bottom drawer, right at the back where you never bothered to look. Or even, don't fall in love with her. You see, there is a queen now. She has a hotel, not a castle, And she doesn't attend banquets or fight with a sword, but she is beautiful and kind. And she has these big brown eyes that shine brighter than the lights on the promenade whenever she smiles. She always knows how to make you laugh, and she gives the best hugs. Sometimes, when she looks at you, you think she might feel the same way you do. Only she has a king already, and she loves him like you love her. It might seem complicated, but what? I can hear you now, asking the question, all inquisitive. You're wondering why I don't just tell her how I feel. Well, remember that time you smashed Mum's vase? The one Auntie Val brought her back from Australia? Remember how scared and nervous you were to admit it was you who'd broken it? It was a secret you knew you couldn't keep, but it still wasn't easy, to be honest. Well, that's how it feels for me, for you, right now. Which brings me to today, the reason I'm writing. You see, I realised there is something I wanted to say after all. And if I can't speak the words, then at least I can write them down, in the hope you'll somehow find them. The truth is, I don't really think it matters if we sometimes have to panic about getting our work in on time. You'll get it done in the end. And even though we love that shirt, we've got plenty of others that we like just as much. Plus it was a pig's wine anyway. And the other thing I was going to say about not falling in love, well, let's just forget that. I was wrong. There's something else, something better I'd like to tell you instead. Ask the question, Dylan. Conquer that fear. Always, always be honest. I should have told her how I felt a long time ago. Don't let us make the same mistake again.
I wrote Presents for a 100-word writing challenge, and it was originally published online at Postcard Shorts. It's based on some of the strange happenings that have occurred at my local theatre, where I worked for a few years. And I thought it would be a good one to record for this broadcast with it going out on Halloween. So this is Presents, written and read by myself, Anna Sanderson. Some things can't be explained. The kettle in the green room boils of its own accord, and the dressing room door refuses to stay locked. In the office we shared, your prized copy of An Actor Prepares regularly disappears for days at a time. It always turns up in the most unexpected of places. This building is old, steeped in history, and you use this as an excuse even when it makes no sense. You laugh or ignore these happenings altogether. But deep down I think you know the truth. You don't abandon the things you love. I'm still here.
Hey man, careful, I got a beverage here. Pardon me, that's my Jeff Bridges impression from The Big Lebowski. I promise I won't be doing any more of those. And I only do those because this is my least favorite part of the show where I have to introduce myself. One of these days I'm going to get a co-host to help me with this so that way they can introduce me and I don't have to introduce me, and it's not like a whole fourth wall breaking thing where Interstellar meets Inception and Leonardo DiCaprio gets stuck in a wormhole with Matthew McConaughey just saying all right for the rest of infinity and beyond. But I get asked quite a bit from readers, but also at book signings, like, hey, are you ever going to write anything that's not horror related? And the answer is yes, eventually. And I've written a couple of short sci-fi stories, and there's an idea I've been kicking for a potential book series to work on after Phantom Lock and the Half Angel series are done. And it's a Western science fiction fantasy world, and it's something I've been kicking around with, and I don't think I have the experience to really tackle something like this right now, but maybe once I'm 30 and older and wiser but still as handsome, I can do something like this as a full-length novel or as a series. This one is called Van Cleef and the Vast Beyond. My name is A. Charles Ross, and this is my submission for Writing Out Cancer. It is a sci-fi western fantasy called Van Cleef and the Vast Beyond. Every morning I tighten the joints and gears inside my right hand. Sitting on the porch on this farm that I had stumbled upon 7 days ago, thanks to the increasingly cold weather further north, the gears in my prosthetic arm became nearly unresponsive. Shadow and I moved diligently to a different area. The first confirmation of relief came from a large oak tree about 50 miles from here. I'd found a screwdriver during my third sweep of this area, which consisted of a barn, a large rusty vehicle in the middle of the fields, and the farmhouse itself. I found it oddly charming that this ancient tool from the Earth civilization helped me fix a good portion of the problems inside the motors. Below the flesh of my right shoulder, I opened up all the compartments of my mechanical bicep and forearm, chipping away at the rust and replacing the parts that had received extensive damage. My left arm, still all original like the rest of my body, the muscles burned as my fingers twitched. I set the screwdriver down, waiting until the spasms subsided. Shadow watched me at a distance. My companion, ever since discovering her dying inside a fall pit, explored the fields that reflected the rays of the main star, never straying too far. The horse was free to go at any time she liked, but silently insisted on staying with me. Rising to my feet, scooping up the holster for my sawed-off shotgun, I whipped it around my waist, buckling underneath my stomach. Still nearly 50 yards away, our eyes met, both knowing that this calm, this time and place, wouldn't last. Maybe it had only recently been beautiful, far away from the sorceress's influence, an individual I simultaneously tracked and avoided. The lesser, more or less my goal right now, with my increased fatigue and injuries making it unfavorable to face her monsters, tricks, and machines. This very porch I stood on could in fact be an illusion of some sort. Maybe not completely, but parts of it, like the torn doormat that said welcome, added a false sense of security. There would be doors opening soon, close to the final moments of dusk. Rips and tears between stars. I hesitate to call them planets because they hold no master to a galaxy or even space itself. Stories I heard as a kid told of this galaxy that was better controlled by time, less influenced by magic. I considered traveling through a tear that would lead me past the South Stars to a place where I got my prosthetic arm. Looking down at it as if I expected the damn thing to give me confirmation, I knew I needed to get a replacement soon. But did I really want to go back to those crowded cities, overran by technology? The smell of the air, constant waste, and death hung like a nightmare in my memories. Buildings so tall they reached past the clouds with the constant buzzing of flying metal vehicles, either passenger or security base. These cities were perhaps the most influenced by the sorceress's magic. Although they lacked the large-scale battles, the influence was integrated deep within its veins. The parasite dug so deeply it'd never be expelled. Navigating the different highways through the vast beyond came easily to me, and the monstrous horrors. As rifts became more frequent and greater in number, clearly feeling them come to me as like rain on dry skin. If my reading of last night's star alignment was indeed correct, the call and force of the opening rifts would be heard coming across the fields. Then, after they closed within a few hours, it would be days or even weeks before I had the opportunity to jump through one again. I watched the jackalope stop as it crossed between the yard and the cornfield. The creature seemed to take notice of my pondering, its ears perked up by its antlers as it thumped its back right foot against the ground, tossing up some grass. Smiling, I tapped my right foot gently on the porch in response. The creature stood on its hind legs, nearly reaching 2 feet at the apex of its antlers, hopping off at a leisurely pace, satisfied that I was not a hungry predator. Indeed, I could stay on this farm, ignoring the rifts as they came, letting Shadow grow old and have a good, calm life. No more adventures, battles, monsters, or magic, just fields and sunny skies. But that wasn't our destiny, and soon enough it would come calling for me, and the sorceress wouldn't be far behind. You know what I'm thinking about? Marathoning, Halloween Resurrection, Jason X and Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead. But then I'm always afraid that if I do that, my head will explode from how awful they are. They're hilarious, don't get me wrong, but they're definitely the low points of each respective series. And sorry, I just had like a small brain aneurysm just thinking about it. Speaking of like terrible horror movies, if you're thinking about watching something funny that is fairly new for Halloween, I would highly recommend Truth or Dare. I did a really great vlog on Truth or Dare. It's one of the ones that got a lot of views because I was obviously suffering through it, but I was also having a good time. And YouTube's a weird place where if you make a video about a bad movie and you're obviously in distress, people for some reason want to watch that as opposed to an analyzation of a classic like 2001 or Halloween. But Truth or Dare, I believe, came out January or February, and it's about these kids that play Truth or Dare, and it turns out the game is haunted by some sort of demon where it will give you these impossible truth or dares, and you could possibly die from it. And when the demon appears inside a person's body, it basically turns them into Willem Dafoe from the first Spider-Man movie. Like, I'm not kidding. It's hilariously bad. It's so bad. And why do I bring it up now? Why am I recommending it? Because I have a weird sense of humor, I guess. I enjoy terrible movies. I just got Battlefield Earth with John Travolta and Forrest Whitaker in the mail today, and I'm like looking at it wondering, what am I doing with my life? What's your guys' favorite so bad it's good movie? I know a lot of people really love The Room, and I do too. I quote it to myself quite often when I'm alone and I'm lonely and it's dark, and I just want to be like, you're tearing me apart, Lisa. Or it's like the cats will be staring at me and I'll just say, you're lying. I know it's not weird at all. So maybe instead of watching a classic for Halloween, what would be a preferred terrible movie for you to watch? I mean, Halloween Resurrection, like I said, Jason X, Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Truth or Dare, The Bye-Bye Man, any of the Leprechaun movies. All those are just really, really awful. And I mean, the 30-some Puppet Master movies, I'm like here looking at my shelf because I own most of these, and they're just bad. And there's some that are so bad that they're insulting, but the ones that I listed off are so bad that they're funny. And the funny thing about it is some of them do try, like Truth or Dare and The Bye-Bye Man. They do try. They just fail in every sense of the way, and they think if they follow a formula that they can make a good movie, but it just ends up failing. But the worst thing you could be as a movie is not relevant or not entertaining, and they are entertaining. I'll give them that. I mean, I can't say the same thing for the Slender Man movie that came out this year. I'd watch Truth or Dare any day over that. It's like Slender Man was just so boring, and that's why it was bad, and the CGI was just terrible. If you want a good Slender movie, check out Always Watching. That's a good found footage. It's a good solid movie, and it doesn't show the Slender Man too much, and I think that's a good way to approach it. Leading into this next story, because I think the Slender Man movie is very forgetful, and this story by Jamie White, another person that has been with the podcast since the very beginning, her story is forgotten.
Hello, this is Jamie White, and I'm happy to be back on the podcast again. And I'm going to be reading a poem called Forgotten that came from a poetry prompt I found online. This has to do with reincarnation and things like that. That's something that I write about in some of my books. So here it is. I walk along the path I chose, my steps uncertain as doubts rose, looking for the right direction. never realizing the missing connection. So I sit upon the ground and reflect, trying to find the answers that elude me yet. When the channel opens, so is the door that leads me to the one I was before. The one so scared to reveal her way because of the price that will be paid. She walked in the shadows of my mind so real, and now she's been seen so she can be healed.
Well, here we are. We're at the end of the 2018 Writing Out Cancer podcast. I want to thank everybody that has joined to listen to the show. And I want to thank everybody who has participated. I want to thank John Ballard, Caytlyn Brooke, Don Paul, Amber Richberger, Anna Sanderson, and Jamie White. I also want to thank the kind folks at the American Cancer Society for thinking that this is a cool idea and for always being gung-ho when I call them and tell them that I'm doing the show. I want to thank my mom and dad. I want to thank Eric, Abigail, and Christina. And I want to thank Caitlin Matthews for continuing to inspire me, and her family who welcomed me with open arms back in 2015. And I'm very thankful, and I love you guys. You guys are fantastic, and I really appreciate everyone who has been supportive of not only my career but the various stuff that I've gotten to do, whether it's book signings, podcasts, YouTube videos, whatever. I'm having the time of my life right now, and I'm very thankful for everything that I have. Please check out the American Cancer Society website, even if you can't donate, which is okay. At least, maybe share it around and see what it is they're all about. Give them a call, talk to some nice folks. Thanks as always for tuning in. Have a good night, have a safe Halloween, and trick or treat.